Ethan sat in the corner of the dimly lit library, his head buried in thick textbooks, but his eyes heavy with exhaustion. At just 24, he carried the weight of the world on his shoulders. While his classmates rushed off to parties or enjoyed late-night coffee runs, Ethan rushed between 3 jobs, washing dishes at a diner, delivering groceries, and tutoring high school kids in math, just to make ends meet. Every dollar he earned went into 2 places, his tuition fees and his mother's endless pile of medical bills. His dream was simple yet enormous. He wanted to become an architect, to design buildings that would outlast him. But lately, that dream felt like a fading light. His shoes were worn thin, his stomach often empty, and every knock on the door brought another bill he couldn't afford. One rainy evening, while he hurried across campus in his cheap jacket, fate introduced him to someone who would change everything. Her name was Margaret. She was 71, a wealthy widow who had once been a powerful figure in the business world. She sat quietly in the back of the lecture hall, auditing classes to keep her mind sharp. Most students barely noticed her, dismissing her as an eccentric old woman with too much money and time. But Margaret noticed Ethan. She noticed the way his hands trembled from exhaustion as he took notes, the way he wore the same jacket day after day, and the way his eyes, though tired, still carried a spark of determination. Their first conversation was brief. She offered him her umbrella when the rain poured harder outside the hall. "You'll catch a cold," she said kindly. Ethan, embarrassed, tried to refuse, but her firm tone left him no choice. That small act of kindness was the beginning of something neither of them could have predicted. A week later, Margaret invited him to her mansion for tea. Ethan had never seen such wealth up close: marble floors, crystal chandeliers, a garden that seemed to stretch for miles. He felt out of place, like a shadow in someone else's story. But Margaret, with her sharp wit and curious smile, looked at him differently. Then, one evening, she said something that would shock him to his core: "Ethan, marry me." The world stopped spinning. He thought it was a joke, but her eyes were steady, sincere. He didn't understand why a 71-year-old millionaire would want to marry a broke student. But with his mother's health failing and bills drowning him, he felt trapped between disbelief and desperation. The wedding shocked everyone. The news spread like wildfire across the campus, through the city, and even into the tabloids. Ethan's friends couldn't believe it, and strangers on the street stared, whispering cruel assumptions. "He's marrying her for her money," they said. "She's losing her mind," others muttered. Ethan tried to ignore the comments, but the weight of judgment was heavier than any textbook or unpaid bill he had faced. Inside Margaret's mansion, the atmosphere was surprisingly calm. There was no dramatic romance, no sweeping gestures of love. Instead, Margaret treated him with a quiet dignity, a respect that confused him at first. She never flaunted her wealth, never tried to dominate him or make him feel small. Instead, she shared meals with him in the kitchen, laughed at his clumsy attempts to help around the house, and asked him about his day in a way no one else ever had. One evening, after a long day of classes and work, Ethan found himself sitting beside her in the grand living room, the fire crackling softly in the background. She studied him for a moment, her sharp eyes softened by a rare vulnerability. "Ethan," she said quietly, "I don't need love. I've had a lifetime of it and lost enough to know it doesn't last forever. But I do need someone who sees me as human, not a bank account. I want companionship, honesty, and kindness in my final years. That's all I ask." Ethan was struck by the sincerity in her voice. Here was a woman, a millionaire, who had everything the world could offer, yet her wealth had not brought her happiness. Instead, loneliness had crept into her life, masked by grand halls and expensive furniture. He realized in that moment that the headlines, the gossip, the judgment, they didn't matter. What mattered was the human connection, the understanding, and the respect she offered him. For the first time, Ethan felt a strange mix of gratitude and awe. He understood that he wasn't marrying her for money, he was being given a gift, a chance to see a different kind of wealth, one measured not in dollars but in trust, compassion, and the quiet power of a kind soul. And though he didn't yet know what the future held, a small spark of hope ignited within him. Maybe this unlikely beginning could lead to something greater than either of them had imagined. 7 days into their marriage, Ethan felt like he was walking through a dream he didn't fully understand. The mansion, once overwhelming and cold, had started to feel strangely like a home. Margaret's presence, quiet and steady, was comforting. But on the morning of the 7th day, he returned from a long lecture to find the house eerily empty. No servants bustled about, no warm tea waited in the kitchen. His heart raced with a sudden, inexplicable panic. A servant appeared and handed him a folded envelope with trembling hands. Ethan's fingers shook as he opened it, revealing a letter in Margaret's familiar, delicate handwriting. "Ethan, if you're reading this, I am not by your side. I wanted these last days to be ours, to feel alive and laugh and share stories that mattered. You gave me that gift in ways I cannot describe." Ethan's stomach dropped. The next lines made his hands tremble harder. "I don't have much time left. But I want to give you something far more important than I can ever express in words. I have placed my entire estate and all my scholarship funds in your name. You now have the means not only to secure your future but to change the lives of countless young people who, like you, struggle to survive and dream." He sank into a nearby chair, tears blurring his vision. Shock, disbelief, and overwhelming gratitude collided within him. He thought back to the judgments, the whispers, the mockery from people who didn't understand their bond. None of that mattered anymore. Margaret's final act was one of pure, selfless generosity. She had trusted him, not just with her wealth, but with her vision for a better world. Ethan realized, in that moment, the full depth of what had happened. This was never a story about money. It was about trust, compassion, and the belief that one person could make a difference in another's life. Margaret had seen something in him, a spark, a heart that deserved not only help but the chance to flourish, and she had acted on it in the most profound way possible. As the sun dipped below the horizon, casting golden light across the grand hall, Ethan whispered softly, "I won't let you down." In that single moment, the mansion transformed from a place of wealth and loneliness into a symbol of hope, of human connection, and of the incredible power of selfless love. Ethan knew his life, and countless others, would never be the same. Ethan raced through the cold city streets, the letter clutched tightly in his hand. His mind was a whirlwind of emotions, shock, gratitude, fear, but above all, a desperate need to see Margaret. The mansion felt emptier than ever, and for the first time, he realized how fragile life could be, even for someone who had everything. He arrived at the hospital to find Margaret lying in a pristine, sunlit room. The steady beep of the monitors was a harsh reminder that time was slipping away. She looked frail, her once vibrant energy dimmed by illness, but her eyes, those sharp, piercing eyes, still held warmth and clarity. "Ethan," she whispered, a soft smile tugging at her lips. Her voice was weak, but every word carried weight. "I wanted these last days to be full of life, and you've given me that gift. But more importantly, I want to see what you do with the future now that it's in your hands." Ethan knelt beside her, holding her trembling hand. Tears streamed down his face as he tried to speak, but his voice caught in his throat. He had never felt so small, so powerless, yet so profoundly connected to another human being. I will make it right, Margaret. I promise. I'll use your generosity to help others, to change lives." She nodded weakly, her eyes shimmering with satisfaction. "That's all I needed to hear," she murmured. There was no bitterness, no regret, only peace. Ethan felt the weight of her trust settle on his shoulders. It was immense, almost unbearable, yet it filled him with purpose. As night fell, Margaret's breathing slowed, and Ethan stayed by her side, holding her hand, whispering words of comfort. Finally, she exhaled softly for the last time. The room was silent, except for the rhythmic beat that slowly faded away. Ethan remained kneeling, heart heavy but resolute, realizing that her final act, the gift, the trust, the life lessons, was the greatest inheritance he could ever receive. In that moment, Ethan understood something profound. True wealth wasn't measured in gold or estates, it was measured in compassion, in selfless acts, and in the lives we touch. Margaret had given him the chance to become more than a struggling student. She had given him the responsibility to create a ripple of hope that would extend far beyond her passing. Ethan left the hospital that night with tears in his eyes but determination in his heart. The world might have seen scandal, but he saw love, kindness, and a legacy that would last forever. Years had passed since that fateful week that changed Ethan's life forever. The mansion, once a silent monument to wealth and solitude, had transformed into a hub of hope and opportunity. Ethan, now a successful architect, had dedicated his life to helping those who, like him, had struggled to pursue their dreams. He had established a scholarship fund in Margaret's name, and a university building bore her name proudly, a symbol of generosity, vision, and human kindness. Every day, he watched students from poor families walk through its doors, eyes wide with hope and excitement. They didn't know him personally, but they knew the story of a millionaire widow who had trusted a struggling young man, believing in his potential and, through him, in theirs. It was a legacy built not on money alone, but on the transformative power of selflessness. Ethan often walked through the halls, remembering Margaret's words, "Promise me you'll use this for good." Those words had become his guiding principle, shaping every decision, every project, and every interaction. He had used her wealth to fund schools, sponsor scholarships, and mentor countless young people who might have otherwise fallen through the cracks. Yet, the greatest gift Margaret had given him was not the estate or the scholarships, it was the understanding that true riches come from the heart. In quiet moments, Ethan would sit in the library of the university, watching students laugh, debate, and dream, and he would smile through tears, remembering her kindness, her foresight, and her unwavering trust. He often told the story to those who doubted the power of compassion, saying, "I married wealth, but I inherited love. And that love built futures." The words became more than a statement, they were a lesson, a reminder that one act of selflessness could ripple across generations. Ethan's life, once weighed down by struggle and despair, had been transformed by a single, unexpected act of generosity. And as he stood beneath the golden light of a setting sun, surrounded by laughter, learning, and hope, he knew Margaret's spirit lived on, not just in him, but in every student whose life had been touched by her remarkable gift. The story ended not with sorrow, but with inspiration, a testament to the idea that kindness and trust have the power to change the world, one heart at a time.